J'ai jamais pensé que tu serais évolué. C'est toi maintenant.
Tu as vu le quelque chose comme ça? Les enfants dans le côté là, quand on voyait les enfants ensemble, ils disaient quoi? Il y avait les enfants sur les photos. C'est très fort. Les enfants qui la tous. Ah oui. Peut-être que la même chose, c'est les enfants de nos jours.
Là, il disait un peu que les effets sont sortis du cerveau.
Ah, il faut que j'en vois aussi. Là, oui, c'est quand même on voit. Franchement, il faut que je laisse un peu. C'est qui va venir. Ensuite, tu as chose. Bon, comment elle s'appelle? Massine dans la liste du seul.
Good afternoon. My name is Thomas Abankwa, and I'm going to be your guide. So if you have any question, comment, or contribution, just let me know. But I must say the history here is very traumatic and emotional. The most important aspect is the lesson that we learned from this place. First, we talk about the male dungeons. We have a look at the governor's residence. They condemn the door or the gate of no return should be the last place for us to visit. We are inside the Cape Coast Castle, and others do call this place Cape Coast Slave Dungeons. The structure that we are seeing here happens to be the third and the smallest castle that was built by the Europeans when they came in. The coast of Africa, we do estimate about 60 forts and castles to be built here, just that Ghana alone had almost 40 of them, which was all because of gold. And that made the Portuguese name this region as the Gold Coast. Nigeria, Benin, Niger, a section of Togo had the name Slave Coast, because that was where most of the West Africans actually were captured from. So areas like Cameroon, Grain Coast, Ivory Coast, and others got these names based on the resource that they were getting from the lands. A lot of these Africans, having moved from Nigeria, Benin, Niger, with the forts and castles here, should tell us they were walking, of which mostly I do use Accra as my reference. Imagine if today you were asked to walk from Accra to this place, the journey and the struggle before you make it to this point. But then this time around, some had to walk beyond the borders of present day Ghana. A lot of them died, because coming in, wild animals might attack some of them. Some had to get drowned in rivers. Others also, tiredness and hunger would also kill them. For you to make it to the castles, because of the journey, they were taking the created resting points. Mostly in Ghana, we do call them the slave markets. So from the north down to the south, areas like Salaga, Picoro from the north, Winchik and Tampo, Kumasi as the middle beds, then they moved them to the coastal zones. Asin Manso is just 50 kilometers away from this place. Over there they had a river, and that was where most of the captives got their last bath as Africans. They gave them food to eat to regain some strength. The beards and the hair is to be shaved so they look younger for the trade. Then shea butter will be smeared on the skin. And the purpose of the butter was to heal their wounds and also make them look attractive because they were bringing them in to be auctioned. Inside this castle, they had a chamber called the Palava Hall. And over there, they had nurses, doctors to examine them to know their strength. They grouped them into domestic and commercial slaves. The domestic ones were those to work in the castle, and the commercial ones were those to be exported. And right after grouping them, they got them exchanged with commodities such as guns, gunpowder, mirrors, drinkables like rum, sugar, tobacco, and other things that you might have heard they were using for the exchange. After, they moved them all to the courtyard to get them branded. And with their branding, they set fire, would place in metals that had their embossed designs underneath them. So a metal, red hot, just from the fire, moves into an oil, and from the oil, then to any part of the body, they would stand. So it would be the chest, shoulder, back, or the arm. Some preferred having captives pierced with tags like earrings, and others were also given metals like anklets. Then they separate the males from the female. So the males had to stay in here. About 100 meters away from this place, they had the female dungeons. We stay in the castles until ships were ready to get them from this place. But whilst they wait for the ship, also they work. So the structure that we are seeing here, to credit it to the English, but then the labor work happens to be the enslaved Africans. My maid mentioned that a lot of forts and castles were built here. Out of these numbers, only 3 were castles, and the first ever European structure to be built on our land happens to be the St. George's Castle. Popularly today, we call it the Elmina Castle, built by the Portuguese around 1482. The second is the Christiansborg or Yosu Castle, also built by the Danish around 1661. And the last is where we all find ourselves today, Cape Coast Castle, also by the English around 1664.
The second one was built where?
Accra, Osu.
Oh, it's the Osu Castle.
Yeah.
Okay.
And this was by the English around 1664. But then out of the 3 castles, Cape Coast is the only castle that was built purposely for the transatlantic slave trade. So when talking of castles, this is the smallest and the last castle that was built. But then when talking of dungeons, this is the biggest dungeon ever to be built in Africa for the transatlantic slave trade. The trade actually took place in 3 continents, which was Europe, Africa, and then the Americas, which lasted for a period of 300 years. And I always say it was around the 1500s when the Europeans actually were seeking routes to India, some would say Asia, to trade. They landed in the Americas, started plantations like sugarcane, tobacco, cotton, coffee, and others in large scale. Earlier, they subjected the natives from those lands to be working on the plantations, but then the hardship was killing them. The natives got introduced to diseases like measles, pox, influenza, syphilis, and others. And as well, because they were owners of the land, easily they could escape from this place. A Catholic missionary with the name Bartholomew de las Casas suggested the use of Africans, justifying the Africans being stronger, that the African system could withstand both tropical disease as well as the European diseases. Looking at the climatic condition in Africa and the work the Africans were doing on their land, it was similar to what they expect them to do in the New World. So moving them out there should be of their best advantage. The then Pope was by name Pope Nicholas V, and he had the Papal Bull or the decree signed, which was to seal or to comment with the trade. In here, they had different ways to get the Africans. Some Africans were raided, kidnapped along the coast by the early Europeans themselves. Some were brought in here as a result of tribal wars or frictions we had here. Others also were convinced, or some would say deceived, that they were to be given better lives. But once you get to the New World, whatever you were promised will not be given. But then the trade wouldn't end here, because after all this, when they get to the New World, the plantation owners would exchange the same Africans with sugarcane, tobacco, cotton, coffee, and others. The raw materials are sent to Europe to be transformed into finished goods. all finished goods are moving back here for the cycle to start all over again. That gave us the triangular trade or the transatlantic slave trade. So basically, that is the system. If you have any question, comments, contribution, you would let me know. And if not, we move down this way. Alright, so the dungeon those days had no lights. So once they were brought in, the three holes that you are seeing will provide them with light and also serve as their source of ventilation. The male dungeon is divided into 5 chambers. From the first down to the 5th chamber, we estimate about 700 to 1,000 captives staying here. So mathematically, each room could hold over 150 of them. But then get to know they were raided, kidnapped, hunted, through warfare. So the place wouldn't always be filled with captives. Sometimes a chamber could even be less than 50. But then because of the condition they had in here, not all of them were to make it out of this point. Once brought in here, they expect them to defecate, urinate, would sleep in the same dungeon. A lot of them got sick because just this number in here, communicable disease, easily would spread amongst us. And aside that, the unhygienic condition would add up to the illness. Cholera, malaria, fever, diarrhea, and others. If you were to die in the dungeons, there wouldn't be any befitting burial for you. They load the bodies in sacks, add cannonballs to give it weight, and dump all the bodies into the ocean. So the sea out there happens to be mass burial for a lot of the Africans that died in here. If you look on the floor, you see some trenches or drainage systems here, which serve as passage for waste in here to move into the sea. But then we ask ourselves, how often would it rain? And rainwater itself can wash off all the waste they had in here. The domestic captives would come in to clean the place. And sometimes when they come in, they can't pick all the waste because some of them might have stepped on the poop and other solid waste, making them stuck on the floor. So what they would get from this place, they do so. The rest, they cover them with sand. And over the years, they kept creating layers in the dungeon. 1974, we had some group of archaeologists from the University of Ghana. They came in, got this place excavated, discovered the bricks we stand on as the original floor of the dungeon. So they took samples of what they got from this place to their lab, got them tested, and the result that came out actually proves that whatever they left from the 2nd down to the 5th chamber, as well as the smaller portion over there, happens to be the toilets, the vomit, the sweat, the blood, the food particles. So if you don't see any brick on the floor, it should tell you are walking on human waste. And they left these just to serve as a proof so that if you don't believe, you could also get samples to test as to whether they contain DNAs or not. A captive brought into the dungeon is estimated or expected to stay in here minimum just a day, but a maximum almost of over 3 months. Because until ships were ready, you definitely wouldn't make it out of the walls of the castle. Out of these 5 chambers too, only the first one had a gate, because those kept in this room mostly were seen to be the aggressive ones, and they were those that were mostly kept in chains to make sure they wouldn't fight officers as well. The male dungeons. Question, comments, if you have any, you let me know. If not, we go down this way. 150 to 200, each. Alright, so I just want us to take notice of the whole land. What we see here is right in front of a church. So before you enter, move out of the church, you smell, hear, and see everything that was happening here. So when you get to the church, you'll understand it better. I just want you to take notice of this hole. Please. These are the traces on the floor. Hold on, number one. Those are different, but my names. Alright, so this happens to be the last chamber, and this place was also used for the selection of the captives. The condition in here wouldn't make all of them actually survive. So when ships were ready, those that were seen extremely weak were kept at the extension over there. The rest were grouped. They were forced through a tunnel that connects this place to the door or the gate of no return. So you enter the same way we came in, but then you had to use this tunnel. It's unfortunate we are not going through the tunnel because 1834, Captain George McLean, who was the administrator or the president of the merchant, was asked to block this tunnel, symbolizing the English ending slavery. But then practically, you also tell us this was not part of the dungeon system, because if there should be an opening, they wouldn't be there to block them. Before the land was given to the first group to trade here, the natives would come to this area to worship a deity they call Nana Tabe, which was in the form of a rock. But in giving the land out, they were asked to leave this place. So they took samples of the rock to the town so they could worship. The castle we see here was officially given to Ghanaians in 1960. That was when Ghana became a Republican country, and then 1973 they brought them back. So today, those that still believe in our traditional system, they still come in here to worship. That is why we see the priest seated there. On the other hand, we see reeds, and these reeds were brought in here by visitors like yourself. I made mention if you are to die in the dungeons, the body moves into the sea. But we have the belief that the souls are still here. So when you bring them, you don't litter around. Rather, places like this, we keep them to honor, respect, and remember the dead. So when you see them anywhere in the castle, they serve the same purpose. Question, comment, if you have any, you would let me know. If not, please, let's see the condemned cell.
Is who are the stools for?
Those that do come in for prayers or consultation. And as well, visitors also, when they want to sit, when they are tired, they sit there. There's nothing spiritual in there.
Okay.
So the point of no return was blocked, but it used to be there?
Sorry?
The point of no return?
The door was open.
No, the point is actually about 70 meters away from this point. So
But
this
they will
is,
make them walk through the
yes,
tunnel.
through the tunnel to take you there.
Okay. And was there a reason why through the tunnel and not?
You know, shipment mostly was done at dawn, and they wouldn't even want the captives to know where exactly they were taking them to. So you might think, so that is why even today some do think that there is a tunnel connecting this place to Elmina, because they knew Elmina had a point or gate of no return. So for them, walking through the tunnel slowly, once you get to the door, then straight you are being moved out of this end.
And you said 1916? Did you say 1916? 1960.
That was when
This is
Ghana became a
Ghana-
Republican
Okay.
country, so they gave
So
us the castle.
the castle wasn't given right at independence. It was
No,
in
it was
1960.
1960. So after independence, you know, they were still in charge of our operations and everything. So when we became a Republican, everything that was in their hands was handed to us. You're welcome. So please, we go this way. Hello. All right, so you're welcome. You are going to this and those and this. Yes, why not? How would I like to do? So this is my house. All right, so
Je n'ai pas parlé. Je me suis dit, je vais
All right, so the flag we are seeing here was unveiled in the year 1992. That was during our maiden Panafest, and this was brought in here by the chiefs in Ghana. I made mention some of the captives were brought in here as a result of tribal wars. The land that we actually stand on belongs to the people, so having given them place to stay for them to even construct the castle means Africans had a role in there. So whether they were deceived or not, still they participated. So this was to render an apology for their involvement and as well to remind us not to repeat the same mistake again. And it reads, in everlasting memory of the anguish of our ancestors, may those who died rest in peace. May those who return find their roots. May humanity never again perpetrate such injustice against humanity. They ended with a living vow to uphold this. A living being, if you wouldn't want yourself enslaved, then never should you get yourself involved in any slave activity. That was why they brought this plaque. But then the other one is a self-explanatory plaque, which was also unveiled 2009, July 11th, when Barack Obama and the wife also came to this castle. We are moving to the condemned cell to have a feel of the place. We go that way to the door of no return, then those that miss this part, you come back again. Please, we proceed this way. Yes, sir. From the sun, we try to locate ourselves in the shade. All right, so we stand in front of a condemned cell. And the cell we are seeing here was designed for the male captives. You know, a lot of them in here were warriors from their tribes. So once they were brought out to work, some would want to fight officers, others too would want to escape from this place. And doing that, they were seen to be rebellious. For that, rebellious ones had to be killed to deter others from escaping or fight in the castle. In here, they wouldn't shoot them dead. Rather, they got them beaten out there before they moved them into the cell. The cell had 3 doors. So blocking the 3 doors means there wouldn't be any food, no water, no air, and no light. So you get dehydrated, you suffocate, and then you die in there. But then the sad aspect is, let's say about 5 or 10 of the captives were sent in there. The soldier at the gate's duty was to be sure all those in there were dead before the bodies move out. So if he walks in and realizes, let's say out of the 10, 7 were dead, he wouldn't take them out until the 10th person was dead. All these bodies are laid on the floor for others to see it. So that next time, if you want to repeat the same thing, remembering what you saw on the floor will deter you from escaping or fight. Then they dumped the bodies into the sea. So it was more of a psychological way to control other captives in the dungeons. We are moving in to have a feel of the place. Please get to watch your head coming in there. This door we see here happens to be the only original door we have left in this castle. So any door or window you are to see has been restored, the last door now. You join me inside. Please be coming in. Can you see me now? Yes. Yes. Oh, please move forward, else you block others from entering. Alright, so this happens to be the condemned cell, and luckily for us today, there's no door here. No door in the middle. The first door itself open, but I'm sure we still feel the heat. So imagine with 1 or 2 doors blocking us. Like I said, until the last person was dead, nobody gets to leave this place. That is why today some prefer calling this end the room of no return. Or because we come in as a living being, but only dead bodies were to be taken out of this place. I wouldn't want anyone dying in here. Please, you watch your head. Then we all go outside. Watch your head.
one more persons.
All right, so we go up this way. We stand inside the Palava Hall, or the auctioning block. And if you remember earlier, I made mention from wherever the Africans were captured from, once they got to this castle, they brought them to this room. So in here, nurses, doctors will examine them to know their strengths, group them into domestic and commercial captives. And the domestic ones, I said, were those to work in the castle. The commercial ones are those to be exported. Then right after grouping them, the merchant over there, according to your physique and your strength, would help them decide as to what they should exchange it with. That was where some were given or exchanged with the guns, gunpowder, the mirrors, the drinkables, and other stuffs they had here. They moved them to the courtyard for them to be branded with the heated metals. Then they moved them to the various dungeons. So this was the marketplace where they got the Africans auctioned. It was within this same room where some 8 Kusta chiefs also met with Commander Hill, Captain George McLean, and some 2 other English officials to sign the bond of 1844, which was the same bond that laid foundation for our colonization for 113 years. Per the agreement of the bond signed in here on the 6th of March 1844, the Gold Coasters were supposed to gain their independence in 1944. But in 1944 came, they couldn't gain independence. That was why when Kwame Nkrumah, our first president, came to the picture, he was fighting for self-government now. But with the back and forth, it took them additional 13 years. And they also chose that same 6th of March to mark exactly 113 years the bond was signed. After independence, it took them 3 years, 4 months before Ghana became a Republican country, which was 1st July 1960. This year is exactly 68 years. Ghana became an independent country, and as well, we have about 3 months for Ghana to become a Republican country after 65 years, as I speak with you. The floors, the ceilings, the doors and windows that you see here, everything has been restored. The only thing we came to meet in here happens to be at the edges. You see some black ceilings there. Apart from that, whatsoever that you see here has been restored. So if you have no question, let's see where the governor was staying. This one. All right, so this section of the castle, as well as the ground floor, was the barracks for the European soldiers. They used this whole place and the middle as their canteen. George McLean, one of the governors or the administrators, introduced us to the way the Europeans settled disputes. So the room we are seeing from this place, stretching to where the window is open, was actually the court, of which this is where common law was first practiced here in Ghana. Around that same 1840s, they had this place converted into a prison for the Africans. And it was a prison from 1840s until 1992. That is about 33 years ago. The prison moved from this place to Ankafo, and now, as we can all see, a craft shop. So it was first.
Are you saying the red top building is the?
No, there are rooms over there. So the rooms that you are seeing here, there are rooms in there, which is now the craft shop. So they were all prisons, or let me say,
All those doors where the shops are were prisons.
yeah, were prisons. Until 1992, they moved it, and now, as you can all see, a craft shop. The middle part, which was the canteen for the soldiers, now operates as a coffee shop. So it still serves the same purpose here. And this is not the only place they were using as a prison. Anomabo also became a prison. James Fort, Asher Fort, and others were all serving that purpose. Because when the Europeans lived, the castles and the forts, most of them were not into use. So they had to convert them into prisons to get use of them. The business or the trade here was very profitable. I'm talking of the human aspect and also the gold trade. So if you had a place and you don't protect your end, other Europeans were also willing to fight and take over the land. So the castle that we are seeing here was built by the English, but then the land itself had been used by 4 different groups before the English actually came in. The Portuguese happens to be the first settlers on this land. After the establishment of the Elmina Castle, a section of their traders came here. They built a timber lodge and named this land as the Cabo Corso. In English, it means short cape. Stayed here for almost 100 years until the Dutch fought them at Elmina. So they left Elmina and had to abandon this place. When they left, the Swedish took over, and the Swedish built a fort here. Stayed in for almost 5 years. The Danish came in for the Swedish. Danish stayed for almost 2 years. The Dutch came in for the Danish. Dutch stayed for an additional 3 years, and the English also for the Dutch. So when the English took over, they rather expanded the Swedish fort into a castle and stayed here for 296 years. And also, as well, corrupted or probably changed Cabo Corso to Cape Coast, as today we call this land. And they stayed here for 296 years. The English knew enemies would come fight them, so they were fully prepared to protect their gains. So if you look around the castle, you see heavy metals, the cannons with their bores. And aside these weapons, they built 2 forts to serve as a watchtower. So if you look up on the hill, you'll see one of the forts over there, the white building with the red top over there. It is called Fort St. William. And on the other hand, there is Victoria behind this church. So Victoria and William served as watchtower. Soldiers up there will see any group coming from the land and any ship from the sea. When they do so, they signal those in here. In the morning by waving flags. In the afternoon, they use the reflection of mirrors. Evenings, they use torches indicating enemies approaching. So the soldiers get to the cannons, put in gunpowder, place balls at the mouth, lights the match, straight into the enemy ship, water goes in there, it sinks into the sea. And that helped the English surviving for the 296 years. Whatever we walk on, talking of the marble stones, the pitch pine wood are all original from those days. We still have them here. All these are original. So please, let's get to the governor's room this week. Because of the video. So that's why I told you earlier. The aspect is this full video. We stand inside the governor's living room. Most of us have been to the dungeons, and I'm sure we saw the condition there. If you are yet to go there, to definitely when you go there, you do the comparison as well. And I'm sure those that were down there, you saw the type of events the captives were having and what the governor had up here. When I turned on the light down there, you saw how dark the place was. And as well, we can all see our faces here. The breeze coming in, the view of the sea, the natural light in the space to which the governor stayed alone should tell us he was enjoying up here. And aside having this space as the living room, the governor had his bedroom over there. So please, let's see the bedroom too. Alright, so the living room is having 9 windows. The bedroom is having 5, his corridor with 2. So one person staying here had 16 windows surrounding him, of which he could get almost a 360 look all over the castle, from the land view where the soldiers stayed, the sea view, and the courtyard of the castle. So whatever that happens around, once he was up here, he definitely would get to see it. And if you are to compare the type of vents the captive had down there, you sum up all the 9 vents in the male dungeons, you are not even going to get a complete window like this. But one person had 16 to surround him, and as well had almost 3 or 4 doors here. If there is no question, then we see his reception and personal office. Please, this way. Alright, so we stand inside the governor's reception area. So here he will receive visitors, do their drinking, entertain them in this room. And the smaller chamber over there was the personal office. So once appointed as a governor, you have a reception, an office, a living, and a bedroom. Underneath us, starting from where the lady stands, it extends a little bit out, happens to be the first chamber of the male dungeons, the second, the third, which is the church, the fourth and fifth move this way. Just that when you were up here, you wouldn't hear anything from the dungeon because of the thickness of the wall. But in the church, whatever that was going on, you'd smell, you'd hear, and get to see it. So if you have no question, let's see the church from this point. Alright, so we stand right in front of a church, and the name of the church here was the Society for the Propagation of the Gospel. As PG today we call that same church the Anglican Church or Church of England. And those days, walking in and out of the church, you would smell, you would hear, and get to see everything that was happening down there in terms of the third chamber whilst they move in here to worship. So if you were with us in the dungeons, remember, I pointed at the whole saying, walking in and out, you witness everything that happened there. If you are yet to see it, don't worry, when you get to the dungeons, you'll see it for yourself too. At the point, this place became a school. And the school was not for purely Africans, neither purely Europeans. It was designed for the mixed race that they had with the blacks here. And some of these kids moving in and out of the school as well got brainwashed, became slave merchants here. Today, it no longer serves as a school nor a library, rather it operates not as a school nor a church, rather operates as a library for the community. Of which, yes please.
I have a question. They would keep the mixed race children that they had with the women that they raped.
Yes.
Would any of those children still be sent on?
No, here.
They would stay here.
Yes,
So a mixed
here.
race child from a rape would stay here and not go. But their mother might.
The mother will be sent out.
Mother
You
would
would only be set free if probably after delivery you were seen weak, that probably you can't work, or that you probably might change your status of either being instead of being a commercial slave, you might become a domestic just to take care of the kids, as in serving as nanny or probably doing the domestic chores in here.
Did not go.
No, some of them participated. Once they had
mom, they shipped their mom off and
yes.
They kept them stay,
just help sell.
selling, participating in their father's business.
Yes, please. So today, like I said, is a library for the community, of which just 2 years ago, the Zetas helped us restore the library. So now it happens to be an active library for the community. So if you have any question, comment, you would let me know. But then get to know this is not the only place they have a church above a dungeon. Almost all the castles and some forts have the same system. Talking of the traditional churches that we have in Ghana, the Anglican church started right here, the Wesley Methodist at the forecourt over there, the Presbyterian church above the female dungeons of Yosu Castle, the Kali church above the slave market of Elmina Castle, and also they had the Dutch Protestant church also above the female dungeons at the same Elmina. So most of these churches were right on top of the dungeons until later they moved into the community as well. And early part it was only for the Europeans, no black was allowed here as well. Please, we go down this way. All right, so this section of the castle was a graveyard for the Europeans. And the year 1996, the place was excavated and only 4 were left here. Out of these 4 graves, the one separated happens to be the only African buried amongst the Europeans. The mother, father, all Africans from this town. His name, Philip Kwaku. Originally, he was Kwiku, a Jiri from this town. The father was one of the middlemen that were supplying the Europeans with captives. So the role of this man got his son a scholarship. The son was taken to England at the age of 11. In England, he got baptized into the Anglican faith, given the name Philip. The name Kwiku also got anglicized to Kwaku, and that made him Philip Kwaku. Age 24, he became the first black man to be ordained as an Anglican priest after completing Oxford University as a theologist. And the following year, he was brought back to this castle. So right up in the church, he led an all-white congregation whilst others stayed beneath him. Served this castle for almost 50 years before he died. The role he played in the castle got him the befitting burial over there. But in Ghana, Philip is well known for Western education, because it is said at the point when treatment was poor for him, salary itself was not coming, mostly in the town, he would commerce to feed himself, and through that he taught the natives how to read and write English language. So when you talk of Western education in Ghana, they attribute to him. That is why the first basic school that was built then, Goku's era, has been named after him as the Philip Kwaku Boys School. Age 75, he died. They got him buried right here. The rest are all Europeans. First one here is by name C.B. Whitehead. Whitehead, we don't know what actually killed him, because as of today, some do say he was shot by a Dutchman, others do say malaria killed him. Philip was 38 when he died 1812. The middle is a lady. Her name Letitia Elizabeth London. And London was here to visit her husband barely 2 months, she was found dead in the husband's room. When she died, rumors spread she poisoned herself because she got to know the husband, having stayed here for almost 8 years, was having an African mistress. So out of the frustration, she took the poison. Some do say the mistress rather came to the castle, posed as a maid, got her poisoned, and others do say malaria killed her. She died at the age of 36, around 1838. And the last one is the husband. The husband is very popular in the Ghanaian history, the name George McLean. I'm sure today I've mentioned the name almost 3 or 4 times. I made mention he blocked the tunnel connecting the feed chamber to the door or the gate of no return. If you look up there, you will see his name boldly written over there, the McLean's home. And that was the courtroom. If you remember, I said he introduced us to the Western courts. And as well, he was the same person that designed the bond of 1844, of which he also penned his signature to it as well. Age 46, malaria confirmed killed McLean 1847. So McLean 46, Letitia 36, C.B. White 38, and the Black Trees Philip 75. These are the graves that we have here. So if you have no question, please, we head to the door of no return. Just a look, then you come out. I made mention there's a tunnel connecting that place to the door or the gate of no return. So the Africans in chains from the feed place would walk slowly to the door or the gate of no return. 2 European soldiers will stand here to watch them. So one at this point, the other over there. Your duty here is to shout at them to walk faster, and the other person is to count them, making sure the same numbers from that place happens to be the same route to the door of no return. So nobody was jumping down here and nobody came up from this point. It was just a spiral. We proceed this way. Yes, please. All right, so from the feed chamber through the tunnel, this was the exit. So just as they had the entrance blocked 1834, the same date the exit also got blocked. But then per the design of this castle, the door of no return was supposed to be here. They had the door blocked all because the sea was coming in from this direction, so that made them block this, created a new door over there so that the males would walk out, go join the females over there, and all of them would exit from this point. This whole section of the castle was actually for the trade. So the ground floor is where they kept the goods they brought for exchange. The first floor was where the European merchants were staying, and above them was the marketplace we visited and other apartments over there. Today we didn't visit the first floor all because the whole stretch, with the exception of the last 2 rooms, happens to be a museum. And for about 3, almost 4 years now, the museum has been closed, undergoing some restoration work. Because of COVID, the castle was closed down, and when they opened up, most of the things were not in good shape. So we are now trying to restore the museum. And this whole part of the castle, from here to the dungeon, was for the enslaved Africans, and this section also administrative parts as well. Please proceed.
When is the restoration for the museum expected to be finished?
If I give you a date, I'm lying. All right, so from this part, we talked about the males. This is the female punishment cell. You know, the European merchants, as well as the governors and other officers, were not coming with their wives. So whenever they wanted to satisfy themselves sexually, they moved into the female dungeons, pick any lady of their choice to abuse or rape her. If you were that brave or strong enough to uphold the dignity you had in here, to prevent them, they will bring you in here just to punish you, so that next time, if they come in for you, you would open up for the rape. But then not all of them were willing to stay in here. Some of them would avail themselves, because even the dungeon itself was not easy for them not to isolate and bring them here. Once you give in, they move you up there, wash you, and take you to bed. After being raped, they were brought back to the dungeons. Some of the females got pregnant, and once they see you pregnant here, they take you from the dungeons, will take care of you so you give birth. After delivery, the mother is allowed to take care of the baby for some months until they see the mother and the baby fit. That is where the separation comes in. The mother is brought back for the next available she take care from this place, but then the babies were for them. And these babies, they had nannies. Most of the nannies were the domestic females they had here, and some of them were their concubines they had from the town. Take care of them so that when they grow, they would bring them to the church. So remember I said they brought some mixed race up there. It was those kids. During and as well after the trade, some left this place, others also stayed behind. That is why in Ghana, if today you check our coastal zones, you would hear a lot of European surnames. So Accra and Volta region, mostly you hear names like Morgan, Van der Poel, Van Dyke, Wales, and others. From Accra, central region to western, you hear names like Smith, William, McCarthy, McLean, De Graft, and others. A lot of them happen to be descendant of the mixed race, and others just adapt the names and some corrupt African names into European names, especially when you come to the Fante lands. Here we have names like Yolsin, Kumsin, Blanksin, Agri, and others, which are all indigenous names now being corrupted to the Western names. And these things happen all because around the 1800s, most of the Europeans, the mixed race saw themselves to be superiors over the natives. Some of them had to corrupt their names to their names, and also some even carried the system of colorism where they were bleaching their skin just to get the same tone as the mixed race had. And today, we still get to experience the same thing in our system. Please, we proceed this way. Alright, so we come in here to be the female dungeon. And the female dungeon had two separate chambers. One in here, the other also directly opposite us. We estimate about 150 of them staying here, the same numbers over there. So ratio-wise, if they had 10 males, it should equate 3 females. The condition in here was similar to what the males had. They would defecate, urinate, and as well sleep in here. But then the worst aspect, as we all know, females every month would menstruate. So imagine a female that was to stay in for more than a month. If no officer moves in to pick you to rape you, that means everything had to be on you. So you could imagine the infections, the pain, the stench, the trauma, disease, and others. If you die in here, just as the males are dumped into the sea, the same way the females would move in there. The main reason for them adding the females to the trade was for them to reproduce or probably give birth. Because giving birth, they would get to multiply the numbers of the enslaved Africans once they had got into the New World. These were their source of vent. An extra one over there, just that it was blocked with bars so you don't get to escape whilst waiting for the ship, the female targets. Let's see the door or the gate of the water. All right, so the door or the gate of no return. Originally, the door they had here was a very short and narrow door designed for one person to fit at a time. Cape Coast today is having a bigger door all because the English at a point made this town the capital city of Gold Coast. The castle we are seeing here became the administrative quarters, so that made them expand the door for administrative goods to be moving in out of this place until 1877 the city was moved to Accra, and Accra is still the capital city of present-day Ghana. Africans that exited from this door never returned back. You walk out of this place, you lose your right as a human being, you lose your connection with your people, and also get to lose your identity as an African. And I'm saying you lose your identity all because, please, your surname. From where, the north?
Yes.
Your surname? Salifu. Salifu, is it a Muslim name or not? Muslim. So I wouldn't pick Salifu today. Your surname. Anaba from the north as well, please, your surname.
Amissah.
Amissah is a fancy name, so, and I can. So let me say, I don't know them from anywhere, but I could guess where they come from based on the names that they gave me. But then they don't care where we were picked from. Once we all get to the same plantation, all of us are to be Christianized, giving names like James, Stephen, Mary, Peter, Stephen, and other names. If the master happens to be Smith, automatically we all tend to be Smith because we become his property. We speak different dialects and the language barrier can't help us communicate. So the best option is for us adapting to our master's language. So years to come, all these tribes are to speak the same language and also bear the same. So the descendants are going to lose their identity. You walk out of this place, you lose your right because you could be killed at any point, any time, and as and when they wanted to do so. The business from Europe to Africa to the Americas was back with insurance. So as to whether you survive or die, still profit will be made on them. So the focus was not the human lives, but the money we're making out of them. A lot of these Africans had never seen the ocean before, because majority of them came from the inner lands. Getting to see the ocean for the first time got them scared, thinking they were going to be killed. So when placed on canoes to take them into bigger ships, some of them were jumping into the sea to commit suicide. I am willing to jump, but then he's not. Once we were in chains together, if I was to jump, there was the possibility of me pulling him, which maybe all moving, we die together. Make it to the bigger ship, because of the numbers they had them laid head till before they got them transported. Historically, the largest number made it to the south, of which Brazil had the highest concentration. Some were taken to Argentina, Colombia, and other areas, to the Caribbean lands, Haiti, Jamaica, Cuba, Trinidad and Tobago, Suriname, Barbados, Antigua, and others, and some also went up north, mostly to the eastern section of US of A. Florida, North, South Carolina, Mississippi, Virginia, New York, and other places. Some also even went to Canada. A section of them also were taken to Europe. Europe to England had the highest number, France, Netherlands, Denmark, Portugal, Spain, and today we get to see black spread all over the world. As I speak with you, we keep getting different numbers, but in the world now accepts about 12.5 million Africans making it to the new world. And out of these numbers, they also do say 3 times more also died. So if you multiply 3 by 12.5, you're estimating about 38 million of them dying and only 12.5 surviving. So in all, if 50 million Africans were taken out of this place, only 12.5 survived. We are all using the same door of no return, but for us here, we are all assured to return to conclude together. Please, your exit. We're using the door or gate of no return here, but then the European merchants, soldiers, and others had their own bigger door up there. Down the stairs, they meet them here. Canoes would pick them, then move them into the bigger ship, and that was where some of them were jumping into the sea, as I made mention, to commit the suicide. The activities within and around this place made them name this whole area Europeans Beach, a place for only European activities. Today, it happens to be a fishing village, but the name is still maintained. The locals do call this place Abrofon-Kwano, which translates the same thing as European Beach. If we look just at the flip of the no return, we have the door of return there, which is to tell us we are all going to return back to where we came from. We had this door in the year 1998, and that was when we celebrated our first Emancipation Day. We call it the Big or the Great Homecoming Day. Descendants of those that survived the journey were asked to come home, interact, and feel their lands again. The living never came alone, rather came with their ancestors, of which they brought 2 of them. One to represent the Americas, the other to represent the Caribbean. So from New York, a man by name Samuel Carlson, and from Jamaica, a lady by name Madame Crystal. They brought these remains to Ghana. First, it was taken to a place they call Abanzi, where they have Fort Amsterdam. From Amsterdam, they had to use the sea through the same door or gate of no return to break the chains and the chains that said no slave will return back. But in the same way they got them out of the castle onto the sea as well brought them back through that door, and that got us the new name as the door of return. Rituals were performed in there. They remembered not all that came out of this place were Ghanaians. Some were from present-day Nigeria, Togo, Burkina, and others. So they had to move the remains into a same ones where I said most of them got their last part. Today you visit that site, the grave of Crystal and Carlson rest peacefully over there. Recently we had one from Barbados, so now there are 3. From Jamaica, New York, and Barbados. We see them where they have slave there is any question, let me know. If not, we have just a minute. If you want to get a picture in front of the door, so we move in there. So please, we have just a minute here. This Akwaba is to welcome you back to the castle. We have it here all because we see this door as a pilgrimage. You know, for many years, humans like all of us exited from this place and couldn't return back. So for you to walk out and return, the best we can do here is to welcome you into the castle. We are to end the tour here. I always do say the best person that should be narrating the history should be the castle, because the castle we see here experienced what I'm saying. None of us here were born those days to know exactly what happened in here. In this castle, we don't frame stories to create any psychological trauma in anyone's mind. Neither are we inciting anyone to go out there to fight others for what happened in the past, nor to cause segregation among races or tribes. We want each and everyone that enters this castle to know the inhuman act, to know the crimes and the atrocities that happened some years back, so the living today can get to learn from the past. Because now we keep saying slavery ended somewhere 1860s. But then deep in all of us, we all know the system still stays. That been modernized into different forms, have been given different names. Africa here, we can talk of tribalism, talk of colorism, child labor, economic and slavery, gender imbalance, and the rest. In the world, we all know of racism, imperialism, caste systems, and others. I always do say, a living being, if you wouldn't want yourself enslaved, then never get yourself involved in any slave activity. To do unto others as you expect them to do unto you. Living this place, let's become agents of change, regardless of our race, our tribes, our gender, our religious beliefs. We're all humans. So probably what is good for the ghost as well should be good for the gander. But the most important aspect is we should never forget about the past. I always do say the past is there to guide us. Forgetting the past means the same mistakes are likely to repeat themselves over and over again. So remember, not to hate, but remember so the mistakes wouldn't get itself repeated again. That is why in here we don't sugarcoat, we actually try to frame it. We want you to know the truth, so the truth will set us free. So thank you all for visiting the Cape Coast Castle. Hoping to see you next time. Bye-bye.